Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, or simply The Covenant, is a 2023 American action thriller film co-written, produced and directed by Guy Ritchie. The film stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Salim. Its plot follows a former US Army Special Operations Sergeant and an Afghanistan War veteran, John Kinley, who returns to the country to rescue an interpreter who once saved his life from the Taliban. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant was theatrically released in the United States on April 21, 2023 by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Pictures. The film received generally positive reviews from critics and has grossed $16 million against a $55 million budget. It was announced in October of 2021 that Jake Gyllenhaal was cast to star in an untitled film to be directed by Guy Ritchie and co-written with Ivan Atkinson and Marn Davies. In January 2022, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Pictures, MGM, bought US distribution rights to the film, which had been titled The Interpreter, planning to distribute it via their United Artists Releasing joint venture, which Amazon folded into MGM itself in 2023. While STX Films co-financed the film and handled the international sales, Amazon Prime Video acquired some international distribution rights as well as post-theatrical streaming rights in the United States. In December 2022, Ritchie revealed that the title had been changed from The Interpreter to The Covenant. The film, later officially titled Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, reportedly distinguished it from the 2006 film of the same name. Just a clarification on some of the language used. Communicating distance on the ground troops use clicks as a synonym for kilometre, e.g. 100 clicks equals 62 miles north of their base camp. The cast includes Jake Gyllenhaal as US Army Sergeant John Kinley, whose unit is ambushed by a lorry bomb attack orchestrated by the Taliban during a routine vehicle inspection at Lashkar, which claims the life of his interpreter. In need of a replacement, he is introduced to Ahmed Abdullah, a steadfast yet disliked interpreter, played here by Salim. Ahmed was previously affiliated with the Taliban but defected when the organization murdered his son. Later, Kinley's unit is ambushed by Talibani reinforcements, which kill everyone except for him and Ahmed. The duo managed to escape on foot, killing several Talibani fighters in the process. Kinley is later shot in the arm and the leg, before being bludgeoned, which incapacitates him. Ahmed now saves his life, and now begins an arduous trek back to the army base, where Ahmed has to literally carry the incapacitated Kinley back to safety, fighting off Taliban troops and getting help from sympathetic Afghans. Later, after being returned to America and his family and fully recovered, Kinley learns now that Ahmed is on the run from the Taliban, and he vows now to return to Afghanistan to save the interpreter, who of course the American government have left behind. Other cast members include Johnny Lee Miller as Colonel Vokes, Emily Beecham as Carol Kinley, John's wife, Alexander Ludwig as Sergeant Declan O'Brady, John's friend, and Anthony Starr as Eddie Parker, a private military contractor who John enlists to help him retrieve Ahmed and his family. Now, I found this to be a really thrilling film, well paced and well acted. It almost seems to deviate from the usual Guy Ritchie formula of gangsters and over-the-top action sequences. Rather, this is a grounded film of what it was like fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan, fighting in these guerrilla warfare type of conditions. This is a well-told, well-acted war thriller with surprising dramatic depths. And it tells a very solid story, yet shows plenty of restraint as well. In many ways, it's an old-fashioned sort of film where the Americans are the good guys trying to save the day. But it also poses questions on the American army. For example, why were they in Afghanistan in the first place? What were they actually going to achieve? And even though they were there and fighting off the Taliban and trying to provide some sort of democracy and freedom to the people of Afghanistan, when they left, they literally packed up everything and left the next day, leaving all these interpreters, who of course had helped them navigate their way through the complicated and difficult cultural boundaries within Afghanistan. These interpreters fought alongside the American soldiers. They were basically a part of the American army, and they were promised visas and a new life in America after the war ended, yet they were left abandoned and behind. This film now interprets that, as here we have Ahmed, played brilliantly by Salim. He's a no-nonsense man who's seen everything that the war could offer. He's chosen to side with the Americans not because he believes in their ideology, but because he wants to stop the Taliban. And slowly but surely, he develops a respect and a friendship with John Kinley here. So much so that he's prepared to sacrifice himself in order to save the incapacitated John Kinley here, literally dragging him on a cart through the harsh terrain of the Afghanistan mountain range. It's a beautifully touching story of one man's courageous bravery to basically take somebody that he barely knows, that comes from a different whole world to him, and yet he's prepared to do everything in his power to save him. Then the movie goes into the opposite story of John Kinley now trying to save his friend. These two men respect each other. They might not understand each other or always get on, but they really do hold each other in high regard. John Kinley now risks everything in coming back to Afghanistan, even though he's on a hit list by the Taliban, to now rescue Ahmed and his family. Now, even though this is a fictional tale and maybe a feel-good story of Afghanistan, when the real story, of course, is actually quite tragic, that so many of the interpreters, 300 so, have already been killed by the Taliban, and the rest, of course, in hiding. So that's where this film almost becomes a contradiction. On one side, it's the good guys winning over the barbaric and ruthless Taliban, who remain sort of faceless and are really portrayed as the bad guys in this film. War is never black and white, of course, and there's always two sides to a story. But one thing you can say about the Taliban is they are an oppressive, strict Islamic regime that, of course, totally recaptured Afghanistan after the United States left, have suppressed the women, and basically brought Afghanistan back into the doldrums. So there's no disputing that the Taliban have very strange and difficult ways of understanding what pure democracy is. But in the same breath, though, why did America really go there? Did they go there for the weapons of mass destruction, as George Bush said after 9/11? Or was it just to keep their military machine running, as they spend trillions of dollars on it every year, and it needs to work? All in all, Afghanistan became another Vietnam. Americans were there for 20 years and literally achieved nothing, trying to bring democracy and freedom to a country that unfortunately was lost back to the Taliban the moment the Americans left. On the other side of the story, this film is somewhat of a dig at the American forces that were in Afghanistan, that used these people and then just abandoned them as like lambs to the slaughter. It's fundamentally a simple story of two men who help each other out, who rise above their own selfishness to do what's right by the other and leave no man behind. Both Jake Gyllenhaal here and Salim act superbly in their respective roles, and it's really through their acting performances and excellent directing here from Guy Ritchie that really makes this film work as a movie. It's thrilling, it's introspective, it's interesting, and it definitely leaves you thinking a lot more about the conflict in Afghanistan. With its excellent performances, superb directing, and well-told introspective story, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant gets a 9 out of 10.